Hey everyone, welcome to April's edition of Getting Started with Jira Administration. Today we're going to be focusing on the topic of I don't know how to say it because we're in a transitionary status, but we're going to be talking either issue types or work types, depending on what you see in Jira. But yeah, it's issue types, work types. It's a very big blur right now. Atlassian's going through a transition. And so we're going to struggle through this one just a little bit as we adjust to the new name. And so we are going to be covering everything you need to know with respect to work issue types. And again, this is part of our getting started with Jira administration sessions. And so if you were here January, February, and March, you know that we were doing administrative things, right? We were doing technical things in these sessions, but we were kind of a team managed project, company managed project. Last time we got into board settings. But today's session, we're starting in probably the most fundamental things when you're talking about being a true Jira admin. I think when we talked about team managed administration, it was really for anyone, right? Anybody could do that stuff. Company managed, we get a little bit more technical, right? You need to be a Jira admin. Thank you, Chad. Yes. See, Chad already knows that we don't even need to waste time at this point because you can hear me. Awesome. Thank you, Chad. And then third, we did the board settings, right? Again, all of these were kind of easing your way into administration. But today, things start to get a little bit more serious. We're going to do work or issue types administration, and we're going to talk about everything you need to know about what is a work type, how to work with work types, um, everything you need to just be successful with thinking about how do we work with work types. Now, again, in my usual spiel, these sessions are being recorded and they'll be available on YouTube after. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. There are no slides because we're going to talk about 4 things, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides here. And that's it. There's the PowerPoint's really kind of not very helpful. So no slides here. We'll be in Jira the whole time. Again, make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you're hitting that bell notification. We want to make sure that if I go too fast on something, I'm very excited about all this Jira stuff. So if we need to go back, you can always rewatch the recording and watch it maybe a little bit slower or repeat over those sections. But make sure you subscribe. We are trying to hit 25,000 subscribers now. So if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, this would be a great opportunity for you to go smash that subscribe button down below. Also, if you can take a second here to say hello in the chat, I always love to see familiar faces, new faces. Chad, you're becoming quite a regular here. Angie, not sure if I've seen you before. A couple of names here. Scott Allen, I think, is a familiar face here. So if you can let me know, is this your first time attending this course? That would be good to know. And if you're a regular now, let me know if you're a regular. Let me know how many of these sessions you've been to. I'd love to see in the chat who's here for the first time and who's been here for a very long time. And finally, throughout this whole course, if you want to ask any questions, we have the chat available here on the right hand, on the whatever right hand side is for you. Hopefully, it's on the right hand side. And we have a couple of people here. We have Katrina Mueller here for the very first time. Welcome, Katrina. Brian, second time attending, so welcome, Brian. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Scott's been to like 8 of them. Yeah, so I was like, I'm starting to recognize a couple of names. Angie, okay, been to several sessions now. Ghost, of course, is a regular. Um, and frequent flyer here from Casey. So welcome, Barbara. All right. So again, ask any questions that you may have on the chat here that is available. And since I have a couple of people that are new, I'll just kind of give you my spiel very quickly. My name's Alex. I do videos on YouTube on how to use Jira. I love Jira way too much, and I use Jira too much. An unhealthy amount of time I spend in Jira. So I know this thing pretty well. I have the ACP 120, ACP 520, and I will be after team. So the Atlassian conference is in a week or in just a few days now at this point. So after the conference, my buddy, the Jira guy, and I will be doing an ACP 620 study session here on YouTube. I don't think we're going to do it on this channel. We're going to do it on the Jira Life. So keep an eye out. I think I am going to be creating Bevy events for those. So keep an eye out in Bevy so that you can sign up and register for those events. But yeah, we will be doing ACP 620. And I'll drop my link tree here just so that you all know. In case you need any help with any of all this technical Jira stuff, I got a link tree right here. And I'm always available to help you out, except next week because I'm going to be very busy at Team 25. But we're going to be having a blast at Team. So let's talk about the 4 things we're going to be covering today. So number 1, I'm going to discuss what work types are. We'll talk a little bit about the transition. I think it's important if you're looking at this and you're like, what the heck is a work type? Well, work type. Well, know that it's formally an issue type. And depending on the Jira you're in, you might see work type, you might see issue type. Atlassian's still kind of going through the changes there. But we'll talk about work types. We'll talk about work type schemes. I think this is what people start to get a little bit more confused on what's the difference between a work type or issue type and an issue type scheme. And then there's the whole issue type screen scheme. So there's like a lot of schemes involved in Jira. And I think this is where most beginner, newer Jira admins start to get a little tripped up. So I'm going to give you some information on the work type schemes, or again, commonly known as issue type schemes. Then we'll talk about subtasks. And then finally, for my premium and enterprise users, we'll jump in and talk a little bit about work type hierarchy. And so, Sean, what is next week? So next week is the biggest week of the year. I call it my Super Bowl. We are heading over to Team 25, and it's going to be a great and magical time, no pun intended, because we will be at the Disneyland Resort. But yeah, it's going to be a fun time. I'm going to be hanging out with Sean Doyle. In the chat, let me know, are you coming to Team 25? Who's attending? Let me know if you're going to be able to make it. I'd love to see who's going to be in attendance at Team 25. So in the chat, let me know. Let me know. I'm very curious. And if you see me, and if you are planning on attending, please feel free to come up. I will have some giveaways. I will have a session that I'm going to be giving a few books away at. I partnered up with a couple of different vendors. We're going to be giving out books at different booths. And so you're going to want to just keep an eye out and where I'm at, and keep an eye out on my social media and see where I'm at. What kind of things can we do, see, or learn at Team 25? Great question, Brian. So at last year's conference, they typically do one a year, but last year they kind of threw an oddball. They gave us a second one in October in Europe, because believe it or not, a lot of the creators of apps in the Atlassian ecosystem are from Europe, and so there's a huge, heavy European presence, and so they all have to fly this way. So I guess Atlassian last year was like, yeah, we'll go that way. But anyway, so what is Team 25 or Team in general? So Team is, again, Atlassian's premier conference. It's technically 3 days, but it's really only 2 days, because you start halfway through Tuesday and you end early on Thursday. So to me, it's just a 2-day thing, but it's technically 3 calendar days. It's really, really fun. This year we're going to learn 3 different things that will be 3 different presentations. One is going to be on F1 and kind of learning how the F1 team works, right? How they work as a team. It's again, the focus is team, right? The team conference. So there's a lot of emphasis on teamwork and challenges that teams have, and how they work together. So that'll be a keynote. It's kind of just a small 45-minute thing where somebody from Atlassian is going to be talking to the F1 team. Now on Wednesday morning, it's F1 a team. I don't think that F1 is a team sport per se, but I've been told otherwise. Okay, and then on Wednesday's the big stuff, right? So in the morning, there will be a presentation, a keynote talking about the newest things coming to Atlassian, right? So I expect to hear a lot about AI. Atlassian's been investing in something called Rovo. So I expect to hear the latest and greatest on what Rovo is, what Rovo is doing, where Rovo is going. Hopefully, maybe some pricing updates on Rovo, and then other AI related things, right? So expect to see what Atlassian is going to be working on for the next year. So one of the things that you should also be aware of is that Atlassian uses this conference to kind of preview, not necessarily reveal, right? Because almost everything that they'll talk about will be something that will come later throughout the next 12 months. At least that's been historically what they've done. And so get excited, but don't get too excited, because it'll take a while before we get to actually use some of these things. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, and then Thursday we're gonna meeting with Google. I think the head of Google AI, and then the founder of Khan Academy. So there's that. And in between all of that, there's sessions, right? So you can go and learn about Rovo, and then mostly Atlassian folks just teaching you what's coming up and how you can use their tools. So kind of a fun session. Anthony, it looks like you're going to be at Team. So definitely, if you see me, come by and say hi. It's okay. So with that, now that's my little promo, my little commercial for Team 25. Hopefully you can make it there. There's still some time. although it's probably be expensive by now, but there's still time to go. All right. So let's kick things off by working in what Atlassian calls issue types. Now, again, depending on your version of the UI, you get to this screen by clicking on the gear on the top right corner, and you will either click on issues or you're going to click on work. Again, depending. Right now, we're going through a very big transitionary period, and so it could be either or for you right now. And so I'm going to click on issues, and when you do that, the first place that you land, the default location, is this issue types screen here. And I think this is an appropriate place to start because the issue type is fundamental to almost everything else that we do. So when you're talking about workflows, when you're talking about screens, um, all the different types of work that you and your team are working on, the issue type it's the center of everything, right? Because the workflows get applied to the issue type, the fields and the screens get applied to the issue type, custom fields get applied to the screens, which then get applied to the issue type. So there's a lot of importance in making sure you get the issue type correctly. And in Jira, when you use Jira for the very first time, you will see some out of the box issue types. Now, Max here has a question. Issue types is getting replaced with work types, or is it the other way around? So issue types is getting replaced with the word work type. Now, I'm having a really hard time here because my screen and my eyes are reading issue types, but Atlassian wants me to tell you that it's work type. So Atlassian, if you're watching this, we want to accelerate that conversion so I can actually see what my brain's processing or say what my brain's processing. But yes, and very, very soon, and for some of you, you probably already seen the changes. You might start seeing work type everywhere. So we are in the middle of a transitionary period, and work type and issue type right now are interchangeable. Okay. Now, what issue types or work types does Jira ship with, right? And so you can kind of see this, right? So when you go to a Jira, to a brand new Jira, this is actually a brand new Jira. I haven't done anything with this Jira here. And I go to the same place. I'm going to zoom in here real quick, though. One of my comments from the last session was that the text was too small. But when I go to issue types, you're going to see that there's a couple of issue types already created. And these are just out of the box. They ship with Jira. It used to be that you used to have only like a task, a bug, a story, an epic, a subtask, right? There was just a few, but more like I guess now more and more and more are coming out, and there's a lot of availability here, right? The project that you create. So when you go to create a project and you pick your template, as part of that template, it will tell you which issue types are basically shipped with you, right? Which ones come out of the box. And so the epic, story, bug, task, subtask, those are the ones that you're probably very familiar with if you've ever used Jira in the past, right? But in this session, we're going to kind of teach you what's available, right? What how you should think about issue types and set you up for some success here, okay? Because at the end of the day, again, these issue types are very, very important. They're very, very critical because everything is centered around them. So let's go back to this view over here and let's talk about what do we see here when we're inside this issue types or work type panel here, okay? So the first thing that you need to know is this is a pool, okay? These issue types or work types, these are all the available issue types that are available in your particular Jira. That's not to say that those are the ones that are in a project. We'll get to that a little bit later. But out of all the projects inside of your Jira, there can be many, many different types of issue types. And this right here will show you all of the ones that are available in your Jira, regardless of whether it's used in a project or not. You can create brand new issue types and not have to use them in a single project. They can just be available. And so this is the first place where we come to either create, edit, modify, or delete issue types in our instance. Now, Katrina says, I've been working with so many tools and I feel that I have to take the decision between choosing only Atlassian and focusing on it or going elsewhere with my professional development. What do y'all think? I would say I'm privy to working with a lot of different tools, Katrina. I I I put my eggs in the Atlassian basket for a reason. I think ClickUp is gaining momentum. I think ClickUp is a close competitor, but stay tuned to what Atlassian announces at Team 25 because I would suspect that Atlassian is trying to position themselves the way Microsoft positions themselves in a company. So your companies today are either Microsoft or Google, right? That's really the only two competitors. But when it comes to like project management tools, it's easy to go from Monday to Asana to Trello to ClickUp to all the other different tools that are out there, right? Because you don't have a lot of skin in the game. It's just a project management tool. But with what Atlassian, and at least in the direction they're trying to go into, they're trying to own the entire stack, right? They call this thing system of work. And with their system of work, they want everybody, not just your technical teams, they want your entire company to be in the Atlassian tools. And if they're successful with that, if they become successful with basically convincing everybody that Jira is the way, then I think Atlassian is going to position themselves, and again, in a very similar position that Microsoft's in, which is, well, everybody's using the tool. There's no point in getting off or using a different tool, right? And so Atlassian, I think, is very strategic here in their enterprise approach. And I don't see Monday or ClickUp, right? I think those are still, they're still very niche, very specific use case products. And I think Atlassian's playing the bigger play here. So I would open, like, I'm in open to all tools, like Sean says here, right? All tools are great, but I think Atlassian is really going after cementing themselves into your enterprise. Will we ever be able to align issue types with agile format, epic, feature, story, bug? Yes. So this is technically possible right now, Angie. This is something that Atlassian has been fixing for the last 2 to 3 years, and I think it's like 95%, 98% there. I've still seen a bug here or there, but actually, to be very honest with you, I haven't done this change in at least 6 months, so it might have been fixed by now. Atlassian does update Jira every single day, but there is the ability to do that, and we'll talk about it in a few minutes here, Angie. So remind me. Okay, so now that we know what we're seeing here, what can you do in this issue type, right? So as a recap, because again, we went on a couple tangents here, this is where you go to see all the available issue types, everything, okay? Whether you're using them or not. And this is also the place where you go to create issue types, because there's two ways to create issue types, right? Method number one is you can click, well, I'll start with the other one. Method number one is when you go to create a project, right? When you pick a, let's say, design project, and let's say we pick asset creation, right? If we click on this template box in this box right here, you're going to notice that we're going to get an asset issue type created, right? And so this is the first and the easiest way, and probably the most non-obvious way of creating issue types, is that when you pick a template, right? So let's go to sales and you pick sales pipeline here. Atlassian is going to create these issue types for us the moment that the project is created. So as an admin, you might not be aware of that, and you're probably going like, "Wait, what happened? How did this happen?" Right? Because if I type in customer, you'll notice that it doesn't exist, right? But if I were to create a project, that sales project I just showed you, then a few moments later, the customer issue type would exist because Jira needs it, right? And so that's method number one. On how do we get new issue types created? Well, quite simply, they get added automatically depending on the project template that you and your team are using. So we have this facilities management one here. This is not going to add issue types. Let's go to legal, IP infringement, right? This is going to add a claim issue type, okay? And so this, again, nothing you have to do. Atlassian's doing it all for us, but that's the first method for how do issue types get created in Jira, sometimes without us being aware or knowing, right? But if you want more control, if you want to be very specific, and maybe you want a very specific issue type for you and your team, then you want to click into this add issue type button here. When you click on that, that's going to bring you up this modal that's going to allow you to create an issue type for whatever you want. Okay. Now let's call this one here. I don't know. Let's see if it exists. So pro tip, before you ever create an issue type, just double check that it doesn't already exist. So I'm going to create a defect. I'm going to go over here. I already checked, right? I just checked that it doesn't exist. And then we're going to select defect. Optionally, you can put a description, right? What is a defect? And you can basically describe what is your defect, right? What is the purpose of this issue type? To be very honest with you, I never put descriptions because nobody else other than the Jira admins will see it. And if you're in an enterprise and you're trying to control the use of the defect for the same to be for everybody to use it the same way, you're gonna have some uphill battles there. So again, nobody sees it except the admin. So I don't really care about the description too much. Now, the type is a required field here. This, my friends, is very important. We'll talk about this in a second here, but you have to make a decision if this is a level 0 or a level -1. And what this basically does is you're going to either create the issue type at a level 0, which means that when you create a level 0 issue type, when you click the create button up here, it becomes visible here. Okay, so any level 0, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0 up is visible when you try to create an issue. Anything that's a -1, okay, very critical. Any level -1 issue will not show up here. You will not be able to create automatically or as an orphan that level -1. And what that level -1 then technically means, what it's telling you is that the subtask, it'll be an issue type. It'll behave the same way. You can still apply a workflow. You can still apply fields, right? You can make fields required just for that particular issue type, but it can never be an orphan. It always has to be associated to some level 0 issue type, whatever that may be, whether that's a task, a story, a bug, right? Any level 0 issue type must be the parent of a level -1, and a level -1 can never exist on its own. So you want to keep that in mind when you got to make the decision and figure out, do I expect my team to create orphan, right? Just standalone defects, or do I require this defect to always be tied to a story, right? And if the answer is yes to that second question, then you want to create a defect as a subtask type. Now, for now, I'm going to keep it as a level 0, and I'm just going to click on add, and that's it. We have officially created our very first issue type, and it is now available. Right now, any project that's using my Jira can benefit from this issue type being available, but we're not quite ready to use it. And the reason that is because this defect ships with this very ugly square, which I hate. And you want to be very careful, because if you create 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 different issue types, all of them default to this very depressing square. Now, I will tell you that in the new version of Jira, that depressing square I think has gone away. So thank you, Atlassian, for that. But for everybody else, you might want to change it, because again, you're going to end up with 50 issue types that are exactly the same icon. And trust me when I tell you that your team they learn to depend on that issue type, on that color, right? On that icon to differentiate between the different issue types. So you want to be very careful here and make sure that you pick the right one here. And so you can click on edit. And when you do that, you will then be able to change the avatar. And so you can click on the select image, and you have a few. Now, unfortunately, you don't have an unlimited amount, but you have a few of the OG icons, and then you start to see a couple of the new icons in the new language that Atlassian is doing. And so when I show you the same window or the same view over here, you're going to notice that we have new icons in the new Jira, right? And so what's considered the new Jira? Well, NG, that's very, very easy. If your Jira looks like this, where you have your this new font style, you have this new grid up here, right? The search bar, if you have the giant search bar going across the top, I'm toggling you. So this is the old Jira. You'll notice that the search bar is tiny. It's on the right-hand side. In the new Jira, it's front and center. You'll notice that the create button is front and center in the old Jira. The new Jira has it off to the side. So there's some fundamental differences between the old and the new Jira. But if your UI looks like this, where everything's across the top, that's the old Jira. If it looks like this, where everything's across the left and the search is across the top, then that's the new Jira. Now, eventually, everybody's going to be on the new Jira, but we're not quite there yet. So again, Atlassian teased this on May 1st, 2024. Some teams have it, some teams don't. As I can see, this is a brand new Jira that I just created 3 days ago, and it's still on the old UI. So it's a hit or miss. Okay. We're talking about old. Yeah. So basically, yes, we are talking old and new navigation. The fundamentals of Jira have not changed between the old and the new Jira, but where all the buttons are, everything changed. I don't know that there's a single button that's still in the same spot as in the old one. So you're gonna have to rewire your brain there. Okay. So, anyways, I just wanted to show you that there's different avatars. So don't get married to these, because when you go to the new Jira and getting to the settings in the new Jira suck as well. But you'll see that the icons are different. So again, don't get too attached is a takeaway here, because all of the icons have been updated with the new modern UI. So really, really fun new icons that I like. I think this is my favorite feature of the new UI, because I'm not too much of a fan of the rest of it. But this stuff here, I love the new icons. Not sure why there's a difference between the sizing of stuff, but anyways, again, the takeaway here is don't get attached to these if you don't like them, because they've been updated over here in the new Jira. Okay. So anyways, so I would say pick a new avatar, mainly because if you don't, right, the thing is going to be for 50, 100, 200 new issue types that you create, they're all going to have that same icon, and it's just going to be confusing for your team if you pull 5 of them in and then they're all the same. We have a question here. Does the new UI apply to JSM? Technically, yes. Because of the way Jira fundamentally works, Jira doesn't really, you're not in a different product. So Jira Product Discovery, Jira, and Jira Service Management, they're all technically just Jira. So if you see my projects here, I'm going to go down to a service project right here. And so when I click into it, you're going to notice that it's in that same Jira. I haven't left Jira. So yes, the new Jira style applies to the new Jira as well. I don't think Atlassian, again, formally acknowledged it or said anything in there, but the UI tweaks itself a little bit ever so subtly to basically indicate that we're in the new Jira. Okay, so now that we know how to create issue types, awesome. What else can we do here, right? So a couple more things. Number one, you can edit them, right? So let's just go back to our defect, right? And so you can always click on the 3 dots over here, and you can click edit. And the edit allows us to essentially rename it. So maybe we wanted defects, right? Maybe we wanted something else, right? And so you can rename an issue type, although I'd be very cautious, right? I'd be very, very careful. And a big, huge warning, you want to be super, super, uber careful. Do not rename things if you don't have to, because when you rename something, bad things tend to happen in Jira. So Jira doesn't like for you to rename things. So I would caution you against renaming whenever. If you can restrain yourself from renaming something, don't rename it, because it will have detrimental downstream impacts. But changing the avatar, you can do that all day long. Changing the description, you can do it all day long. And that's pretty much it. So Sean says, yeah, if you're on the bundle release track or whatever it's called, it might be a while. So let's see. So Brian, so some point my entire Jiras will update to the new style. Yes. So everybody's Jira at one point you'll get the new Jira. This is a reality that is coming, whether you like it or not. For example, remaining issue types. Max, what does this mean? What's the question here? Help me. I don't know that. I'm not sure. Okay. We'll come back. So is it better to delete as opposed to renaming? I would say it is better to. I don't like to delete stuff either, so I'm not a huge fan of deleting. So I would say if it's, let me see if I can word this correctly. I would create a new issue type, right? Give it the new name that you actually want, and then I would either delete the old one, but deleting comes with some consequences too, right? Because if other teams are using it, right, depends on the size of your organization, depends on how big your Jira is. But maybe one team doesn't want it, but 50 teams use that issue type. Well, you can't delete it from 49 other teams, right? And so you might need to create a new one just for that other team and leave the old one there. So I think it just depends on your specific use case, Indian Suga, right? But I would say delete carefully. And then Jira won't, like if I try to delete the initiative here, it most likely will not let me because it's being used. See, so I have to move. I have to change that issue type. I have to physically move it, change the type from this initiative to another one, because you cannot delete any issue types that have issues against them. And so you'll probably run into some of that problem as well. All right. Max says, you said it was a bad idea to rename things, just like Atlassian. Oh, yeah. So that makes sense, Max. So yeah. So renaming things is usually not a good practice because, and the reason I'll tell you why renaming is not a good practice. Okay. And deletion is hard, right? But the reason renaming is not a good practice is because your filters and your dashboards, they become dependent on the name that it had. So the moment you rename things, you basically like cripple Jira's search, right? Because it's going to be pointing to the old name and not it's not smart enough to point to the new name. So you're going to have a lot of it's going to be like an angry mob type of thing. So you want to be careful there. All right, Scott on says, so at some point my company's Jira will update to the new style. Yes, so your company will update. It's coming. The new Jira navigation will show up, but you can revert it back if you don't like it. Scott, so that is for now. So I do know that for a very, very long time. So this is not the first time that Atlassian has done a UI update. And back in like 2020, 2021, Atlassian changed the UI and they had a revert back button, but eventually it goes away. Eventually, I think once everybody's on Jira, I would expect that capability to poof and vanish from you because Jira is going to want everybody on the same UI. So using work is better than issue as it confuses types of issues with used. Yes. So I think so. Great point, Angie. So this is one of the reasons why Atlassian is making this change. So when Jira was first created 20 years ago, issues made sense because the founders were trying to track bugs, right? They were trying to track problems with their like issues with their software, right? And so issues kind of stuck, and and that's how we got issues. But now Atlassian is really trying to appeal to a new demographic, to a new. Remember that system of work that I told you they want to own the entire stack. Well, a marketing professional is going to be like, "What the hell's an issue?" Right? They probably don't care about an issue, and like marketing doesn't have issues, right? And so Atlassian's just changing it to work so that it just so it's generic enough that any team can use it. So that's what happened. Now, Scott, again, I'm not a betting person, but I would be betting that that capability to revert will go away. And then Sean liked tickets. I like tickets too. I think tickets would have been the right one too. I think too many people call these things tickets naturally, but that also does kind of have like a service management mentality. So from a project management perspective, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I don't I think work item is fine. The irony is when I first came to the Atlassian scene back in 2016, I came from Team Foundation Server and they used work items. And so I was like, why in the world are we using issues when I first came to Jira? And now that we're actually trying to copy what TFS had 8, 9 years ago, I'm fighting it. I'm fighting it again because I'm like, dang it, now I got used um issues and not work items. Sean says, or a parking speeding connection. I'm not sure what that means. Okay, so let's see. What else can we do here? So we obviously have the name, right? I already told you under the actions you can edit, and I kind of already told you that you can delete it. Although again, you're only going to be able to delete them if they're not being used, and so you're going to want to be very careful there. Now, the other two things that you can see here is the hierarchy level, which we're going to talk about in towards the tail end of this session, and then related schemes. And so let's start with related schemes because that one's actually relevant, and we can talk about that a little bit easier than the hierarchy level. So related schemes basically tells you which scheme, which we're going to talk about next, issue type scheme, is pulling in or using this issue type. Because remember, the issue types here is the generic pool of available issue types. These are all the different issue types that are available for you and your team to use, but they don't have to be used. They don't all have to be used by all the projects. And so we can control that by working on issue type schemes. And so we're going to move over to issue type schemes. So I can kind of tell you about how this works over here. So the scheme is a bucket. Think of it like it's just Easter's coming around here, the corner. So you're probably seeing baskets everywhere at the stores. And so think of a scheme as literally just a basket, right? When you put things in there. And so each thing that you put in the basket is going to be representative of an issue type. And so you can put your epic, you can put your story, you can put in your defect, right? You control which issue types go into your basket. And so that's what an issue type scheme is. It's just a basket. Okay. Now, I have the ability to create a new issue type scheme up here. If I click on the blue button, right, I'm going to name it Sean's Infinite. I can't spell infinite. Infinite. Why can't I not spell infinite? You know what? Issue type scheme. I'm just going to call it Sean's issue type scheme. Okay. Especially since I cannot spell infinite. Then, optionally here, we give a description. What is an issue type scheme? All right. And then you can pick your default issue type. Now, the very first time you won't be able to do anything because we have to put an issue type first. And so there aren't any available. So none is the option. So that brings us to the second half here, which is the fun part. All right. So everything over here on this right-hand side, these are all the different issue types that are available in this particular project. Sorry, scratch that. These are all the particular issue types that are available in this particular instance of Jira. So not tied to a project yet, but these are all the ones that are available. So you can pull things in like the defect that we just made. You can go with the OG stuff and grab the task. You can grab the bug, right? Maybe you don't want the bug. Maybe your team's like, we don't know. You know what? We don't write software. We don't need bugs, but we have defects. So you can get rid of the bug and only bring the defect, right? Maybe you want to bring in an epic, right? And so you can just keep it simple. A task, an epic, a defect, and maybe your subtasks. Give it a 4-tier hierarchy, right? 3-tier. One, two, three. 3-tier hierarchy. Okay. And that's it. And so you can basically, we have just created a basket, right? A scheme with only these 4 issue types. And now we can pick which one's the default one. And what that basically means is that when somebody hits this create button and they're in the project that this issue type scheme is associated to, what is the default issue type that will be displayed? Because you have to have one. And so that'll be the task. And so that's where you control that. And then that's it. So you hit the save button and we've officially created Sean's issue type scheme, right? And it's really simple, really easy. For some reason, it didn't want to save. There we go, right? And then now it exists. But if we look it up, right? If we look up Sean, you're going to notice that we have the name, we have the description, we have the issue types we just added, but we don't have projects, right? And that is because just because we have the basket, right? We have a basket with all the eggs in it, but we haven't assigned it to a project. And so until that happens, which we're going to do in the next step, then the scheme just lives, right? It just exists. But now it's available for a project to actually use it. And so that's very key here. We got a couple of questions here. We'll pause here for questions. So when it comes to SLA configurations in Jira ITSM, which is the best way to do it? User-based SLA, service-based SLA, support. Okay, so I think probably not the right session to be talking about SLAs because that's a JSON specific one. But I will tell you, just to give you my 2 cents, when it comes to SLA, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, like everything else in Jira. It really depends on what makes sense for you and your team. Now, I will tell you that SLAs, ironically enough, are not visible to the end user. They're not visible to the customer. So the SLAs are really there to light a fire under your agents. And so I would say service based, right, based on priority would be my recommendation. Anka says, why we see all instance types not only for our projects? So because you're in the admin section, right? So if you were just in the project, you will only see the ones that are available in your project. But because we're doing global administration, you see globally everything that's available so that you can make the right decision for the particular project. So this is a feature, not a bug. You want to be able to see all of the types available, not just the ones for the project, because you're creating. This is the steps we're going to create the issue types that are going to be specific for that project, right? And so you kind of just pick from there. Okay. So yeah, she says thanks. Awesome. So now that we have our issue types, right? We can go back over here and we can look up defect, and you'll notice that it now belongs in 2 schemes. The default one, which by the way includes every issue type, and Sean's issue type. Okay. And this is good. This is kind of where we want to be. This is exactly what we need. Now, the last step here, though, is that we want to add it, right? So Sean's issue type here, doesn't belong to any project. And so we're going to want to add this to a particular project. And so to do that, you can not click on the edit, or actually you can probably click on the associate, right? But don't click edit. And then you can fix or find the project that you want. And so you can go to security operations and hit associate. And what this is going to do, it's going to remove any issue types that are in that one and then apply the new ones. And so here's where we divide the junior Jira admins from the expert Jira admins. And that is, whenever you're swapping issue types, it's always easier to add to an existing scheme than it is to swap schemes. Because when you're adding to an existing scheme, right? So let me explain to you what that means, right? So here's what adding to a scheme means. I can go into a project. I'm going to go, oh boy, marketing content, right? I'm going to go into here. Yes, Jira. I know how to use Jira. So please get away. Like, okay, great. So you can go to the project settings of an existing project that already has an existing scheme. And you can go to this, you can go to the, shoot, where is it at? Here we go. You can go to the issue types. Okay. Again, this is an existing project with an existing scheme that already exists. And you simply go to actions and you can click on edit. And when you're doing this, you're essentially going to add, we're back to the screen, right? So now you can just get your defect, pop it in here and click save. And what we've done is we have now, for that particular project, so this goes back to Anka's question, right? For that specific project, we have just added the defect. But remember, we had to what's the fancy word I'm coming up with? We had to manifest, right? We had to manifest a defect. It had to be created first. And so those were the first steps that I showed you. But now that it's been manifested, now we can pull it into an existing project. And that, my friends, is the easiest way to add that new issue type to a project. Because if you try to like swap the scheme out, that's a lot more problematic. Okay. Because the second option is, maybe for this particular project, maybe we do want to swap the scheme. And this is where you can go into that project, use a different scheme this time. Remember, last time, a few moments ago, we clicked on edit issue type, but now we're going to swap it out completely. And so what I can do here is I can go, okay, let's go apply Sean's issue type. And you'll notice that Sean's issue types are different, right? And so when I click OK, Jira is going to go, wait a minute, what do you want me to do with these? Right? And so in the next screen, we will have to move them. Atlassian calls it a migrate, but we have to move those issues of those other issue types to the new available issue types. And so again, this is a harder thing to do. And it's not for the faint of heart, because this is a one-way street, folks. If you make a mistake here, there really is no going back, unless you have like something like revised backup that allows you to back things up and bring your Jira back. But even then, this is a one-way street. So only do this if you're absolutely certain and you know what the heck you're doing. Because if you have an ounce of doubt, I'm going to drop my link here and call me. All right. The moment that you have a single doubt on what the heck you're doing in Jira, call me. It's cheaper for you to call me. It's cheaper for you to pay my rate than it is for you to make the mistake. Trust me when I tell you this. Okay. So it's cheaper to pay my rate than to make the mistake. That's going to be my tagline. Okay. Because once you change it, right? Once you change this, then changing it back, I mean, it's technically possible, but boy, do you need to know what the heck you're doing, and you're doing things manually at that point. So call me first so I can walk you through this all. So you don't make the mistakes, pay the rate. Okay. And so that's pretty much it. You kind of pick. I'm not going to go through this though, because this is, again, a more of an advanced thing, but know that you can very easily just add an issue type, or you can swap the issue type, where the adding is way, way easier than it is to swap. All right, Scott. Yeah, Indian says manifest build. Yeah, so manifest was the word I was looking for. Scott says, and that issue type is not visible in any project using that scheme. Yes. So very, very good point, Scott. So one of the benefits, so this is where we now separate team managed projects from company managed projects. Team managed projects do not have schemes. Okay, that's a very, very big important thing for you to remember. A team, I'll repeat it one more for the people in the back. Team managed projects do not have schemes. And that's important because schemes are shareable. And so company managed projects have schemes, which means that one or more projects can share the same scheme. And this, my friend Scott, presents new challenges for us as Jira admins because people are pretty damn picky, right? They're very picky, and it's possible for you to run into a scenario where you are in you're working with a team, and they're like, "Hey, Alex, we want a defect issue type." You're like, "Awesome, cool, we can do that," right? And then you apply the defect, right? You apply the defect to that scheme, and you're like, "Cool, Bob's your uncle. We got your defect is now in your scheme, except that scheme was shared with two or more projects, and so now the other team that is also sharing it goes, wait a minute, what is this defect? Why did you add this? And you're gonna realize that there's a gift and a curse to company managed projects, right? The gift is that for you as a Jira admin, you only have to do the activity once and it replicates a lot. That's good, right? Less work for you as a Jira admin. The curse is you better not have a picky team because the moment that you become married, you really it's like a marriage, right? Schemes are like a marriage in Jira. You kind of commit to everybody else's affairs here. And so if you don't like that, then don't 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 share your schemes. Now that's not to say that you should make team managed projects because that's never the right answer. You should never make team managed projects. That's always the right answer. But yeah. Oops, sorry, click too fast. Can we restrict an issue type? So for example, only a group of people should be able to raise a specific issue type. In Jira, I do not think that that's possible in a company managed project. But if we come over to a team managed project, right? One of the things that I want to talk to you about here is that when you go to the project settings here and you go to the issue types for this particular project, you cannot bring in that defect the way we just did because that defect that we created earlier exists only for that for the company's managed projects, right? And so Atlassian's been doing a little bit better. Like we can now at least borrow custom fields, but it doesn't look like issue types, at least in this particular Jira issue or Jira project. I'm blinded to that defect. So one of the things I wanted to tell you is that because of that scheme, because of the way Jira works, our company can create sorry, Sean's throwing me off here. Let's come back to this one. Sean, remind me here, but give me 1 second. So first thing that I want to tell you, right? So first thing I want to tell you, and again, we're gonna come back with Sean and Scott here. They are telling us some valuable things, but let me wrap this one up here. So if you're doing team managed projects, a lot of what we've been covering is kind of a moot point because you add your issue type directly in the project. And if you need to do this for 20 projects, then you need to go into 20 different team managed projects and add that defect and create it. You can't share it. It's not part of the pool that we've been describing. That's one of the drawbacks. Now here, right, if I were to create a defect here and click change icon and do this icon here, right, I can, in a team managed project, I'm pretty sure this is possible. I can click into it and there are permissions somewhere. I don't spend a whole lot of time in team managed projects, but I could have sworn there was some permission somewhere. I could have sworn it was here, but apparently not. Maybe it's under the edit workflow. No, it doesn't look like the right place. But I'm pretty sure there's a permission somewhere where you can create, like put a lock. There's like a lock mechanism that you can put on the issue type, and then you can prevent who's able to create them. But I'm not sure why I can't see it. Let me see if I need to add myself as an admin to this project. It might just be that I'm not an admin. But no, I'm a site admin. I should be in here. Hold up. I might have to come back to this one for y'all, but I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly from my ACP 120, you are able to put a lock on these issue types. I'm just not seeing it. Again, I don't spend a whole lot of time in team managed projects because they suck, but I'm pretty sure at this level, somewhere here, you're able to lock things up. I'm just not seeing the lock for some reason, but I might have to come back to you on that one. But let's go and address what Scott and Sean are talking about over here. Okay. And this is so yeah, so you can restrict, but what I would say, it comes with a caveat, right? So if you were to go into a company managed project here, right? In order, you can, there's a couple of different permissions, right? Like there's a permission scheme that allows you who can create. And so, but that's create for all issue types and not one specific issue type. However, if you go to your workflows, you're going to notice, and again, this is a more of an advanced topic here. You'll notice that the workflow here is for all the issue types. However, it is possible for you to create a workflow just for the defect, right? And once you do that, once you create a workflow just for the defect, then you can come to this transition and add some sort of a validator. Actually, I don't even see a condition here though, but you can add some sort of a validator, although I would have expected a condition. Yeah, because I don't see it, Sean, here to do the specific user permission. But there's a permission over here, but it's just obsolete. So I don't think that that's possible. I don't know. I think we're gonna have to do a follow-up video. I don't think I personally don't. I'm not seeing it right. If I could see condition, I think you'd be able to do it. But Sean, we may have to have a little um we may have to have a little sidebar conversation on this. But I'm pretty sure you can't restrict somebody from being able to create a specific issue type in a company managed project. But we will come back to you. I really don't like team managed projects. All right, folks, we're down to the last few minutes. I want to talk to you about two more things before we wrap this one up. And so, just very quickly, subtasks. The subtask here is basically the same thing as the issue type, except you're making those level -1 onlys, right? So when you click on this add a subtask issue type, right, you're going to call it like a mini risk, right? When you click add, notice that it's not asking me, do I want to create a level 0 or -1? It's automatically a -1. Okay. And the way I know that is because this mini risk, when I go back to my issue types and I type in mini, you'll notice that it's automatically a level -1. Okay. But then all the same rules apply. You got to add it to the scheme. You got to apply the scheme to the project and all that good stuff. Right. And I'll just give you the takeaway of how do you use, when to use a subtask, right? If you ever have a requirement where something has to be tied with the story, then you probably want a subtask, because this is the only way to ensure that the user can never create a risk that exists on its own. It always has to be linked to a parent, because there's no way to physically hit the create button to create this risk. It has to be tied to an existing issue, specifically a level 0, 1. Okay. And now, with that conversation of level 0, you'll notice that here we have a hierarchy level, and we have -1, we have zeros, ones, and twos, and even threes. And those, my friends, these numbers are governed over here at the issue type hierarchy. And I'm going to give you a full disclaimer here. I'm going to go full screen here for just a second. This hierarchy, I believe you can modify. Like you can, it's hard because I'm always on the best versions of Jira, right? But let's just go with this. If you're on the premium and enterprise versions of Jira, premium and enterprise versions of Jira, you can then modify this thing. So earlier, I think Angie was asking, can we swap out the feature and stuff like that? Like, yes, absolutely you can, but you have to do it if you're on the premium or enterprise versions of Jira. So it is possible for you to do this. It's possible for you to call this a feature and to call this an epic, right? And so it's possible to do this now. The caveat is you also then need to rename the issue types. And so in that one case where I told you never rename something, this is where you probably do want to rename, because the other thing you need to consider is that when you rename this, right, when you change the hierarchy, this is a global change. I can't stress that enough. This is a global change. So every user is going to be impacted by these changes. So you don't want to make these changes lightly. You want to be very, very specific here, because this is serious. Like the moment that you rename these things, right? I remember I told you earlier, never rename things, but this is that one case that when you rename something, you have to be so intentional with it, because this will impact everybody, which is sometimes a really good thing, right? It's sometimes a really good thing because maybe as a company, we want to implement this. So renaming, right? So re-putting the order is definitely a possibility. But when you hit save, it will affect everybody. So you want to be very careful there. And again, it's a two-step process. Angie, I think Angie, you're the one that asked, right? You rename it here and you rename the issue types, right? So you would want to take your epic and you would want to rename your epic to be a feature. Okay. And then you would want to create a new issue type called an epic and put it at the top. And so that's usually how you do that. Now, proceed at your own risk. All right. And that, my friends, is how we manipulate what's a level 3, what's a level 2, and what's a level 1. So the key takeaway, if you're taking notes, is that this is a global change. You can't just do this for one team, one project. This is everybody gets this change. Okay. And so with that said, we're going to kind of wrap things up here. If you enjoyed this class, I am working on a Udemy course just for you all. However, 2 couple bonuses for you, especially if you're your first time here. Use this coupon code. I have a course that is Jira for beginners, and you're going to get 2 bonuses because of my procrastination. One, you get the Jira admin course that I'm going to be making that is specific for this course. You'll get that one for free. And 2, you get a 15-minute session with me for free, which is a $50 value. So not only are you going to get 2 courses for the price of one, but you're also going to get time with me, which is a little cheaper than if you were to just buy it directly. So make sure you take advantage of that. And this is for today only. And then the only caveat is that you got to know that the message, when I send you the message, it's not coming from me directly. It's coming from Udemy. So check your mailbox for messages from Udemy that we can set up some one-on-one time with me. Now, the last thing before you all go, if you enjoyed this course, we have a lot more. And so we're just in April. And so these are all the different courses that we have going on. And so sign up for the rest of them. I'll drop a link there so you can sign up for those. And yeah, and just basically, I love having you all in class. So definitely stop by. And then finally, if you do anything, if you don't take anything away, you just want to connect with me on LinkedIn. I am going to be at the team conference next week. I'm going to be having so much content on LinkedIn from the team, from the show floor, and just talking about everything going on in the team. So if you don't want to miss out, if you have FOMO and you're like, dang it, I couldn't make it, well, definitely connect with me on LinkedIn so you can stay up to date on everything that's going to be happening at Team 25. And then the super final is if you have any problems with anything that we talked about today, there's my link tree. Find an hour on your schedule, right? Pay the rate. Don't make the mistake, right? Jira's hard. I'm here to help you out. So definitely give me a call, give me a buzz, and let's set up an hour to chat and let me fix your Jira problems for you. So that's it for this one, folks. I will see you all not next week, but we'll see you in a month for this course. But I'll have a couple more sessions after Team 25. So thank you all. Bye.